Forged secretly in mortuary archaeology's hottest furnace, it's Archaeodeath. Archaeodeathlings, welcome to another Archaeodeath interview with none other than Meggie, the Wyrdo. Not me being rude. It's her online
Thing
persona.
So,
Yeah, it's you. It is you though. But welcome and thank you for joining me, and it's wonderful to have you here because we've been thinking about having a chat for ages because online conversations over various shared interests in the archaeology, history, mythology, spirituality of back in them days, back before it all went weird, or when it was weird but in a different kind of weird.
The olden days.
In the olden days, yesteryear, when I was a lad, before the Battle of the Somme, but only just.
Yeah, or like where your parents walked to school through mountains and deserts.
Yeah, they did. Like the Sahara Desert, the Gobi Desert, just to get to school.
Hard life that they lived.
It was back in the day when you could buy a taxi ride, fish and chips, 80 grams of Class A drugs, and a taxi ride home, and have change from a threat money bit.
I miss those days.
Yeah, it was like that, and then it all went wrong. I blame Gordon Brown.
Yeah.
Everything was good before then.
I blame the Battle of the Somme. It was too hot.
Battle of the Somme, yeah. It definitely was a turning point. But we're never going to keep on track because we're a bit too silly. But will you introduce yourself and who are you?
That's a very intense question.
Who are you?
I've spent my whole life trying to answer that question and haven't quite. I know. It's a life's journey. Who am I? Who are you?
I don't. Oh no, you've retaliated. Now I must go into introspection.
No. Okay. It's really hard to describe myself. I guess I'm a jack of all trades and master of none in some ways. I'm Meggie the Wyrdo, whatever you want to call it. I am Norse pagan. I offer readings. I'm in a band. I lead dance groups that combine spiritual stuff with dancing and community and healing, and I've done lots and lots of different things. I've officiated some ceremonies. I'm just overall a bit of an oddball, and I enjoy it. The Wyrdo thing is interesting, I think, because it's spelt W-Y-R-D, which is a bit of a play on words, because it comes from the Anglo-Saxon word weird, which ties into the Norse Urds, so fate, weird, destiny. So obviously doing readings and stuff and working with that side of things, but then also being neurodivergent as well. People used to call me weird all the time, like W-E-I-R-D.
Yeah.
And I just thought, embrace it. That's who I am. Just be weird.
Wonderful. I think we should all embrace our idiosyncrasies, I shall say, not weird. Yeah. and we know each other from social media because we have mutual interests, and particularly I'm not a Norse pagan, but I have interests in the archaeology and history of the Viking Age and the times that come before. So what I would like to learn from you is what does Norse paganism mean to you? Because I think a lot of people get misunderstood. There's a lot of prejudice. There's a lot of dismissive views. They are kind of understand. See, certain other religions they'll offer default respect to, even if they're bigoted towards religious people. At least there'll be some kind of recognition of that it's a thing. But people don't perhaps always even afford that respect to Norse pagans.
Yeah, it's interesting because growing up I was raised Catholic, and even when I was going sort of down a more spiritual path, I had no idea that Norse paganism was going to be my path. Even at school we didn't learn much about the Vikings, not to try and tie it into that. But I think we did one unit maybe in year 5 about the Vikings, and that was it. And lots of people kind of have that stereotype that if you're Norse pagan, you're just into Vikings. And there's that macho, hyper masculine stereotype. And I don't think I fit into that really. It's just, I have a respect for some of the, especially some of the music. It's like, it's great if you're working out,
Yeah.
it's motivating. But I'd say that my practice is definitely more on the animist side, more on the sort of folklore, gentle musical side of things. I think for me, it's about connection to the land, connection to story, because we do have, what's left of the myths that we've got. There's a connection to that. There's connection to music. I feel when you read the myths, you notice like song and music is really, really important. So connection to music, connection to community as well. I find, because growing up Catholic, it was very different, and coming into the Norse pagan community, I can honestly say I don't think I've ever found so much genuine love as I have in the heathen community. I find, I don't want to rabbit on and go on and on and on about myself, but
No, it's important context.
when we'll be doing rituals, and in the evening everyone's sat by the fire, and someone will get the drum out and someone will get the lyre out, and we just start singing. And the amount of neurodivergent people that are in this community, it's insane. Like, I'll be going about and then I just hear someone in the background going, "Oh, I'm autistic," and then my ears are like, "What?" And so I think for those who do join this community, you might find that neurotypicals are quite a minority, which is interesting, because in Christianity it seems to be the other way around.
Is that because people have had to make their own decisions and break out of a different religious tradition they've grown up in, and therefore it requires a particular kind of mindset to do that kind of deconstruction and reconnection?
Possibly. From a few of my friends that I've spoken to, a lot of them started getting an early interest in Norse mythology before they became heathen.
Yeah.
Or they were hyper fixated on the Lord of the Rings, for example, or they just, or someone like yourself who's just very passionate about history in the past and then found their way that way.
Right.
But autistic people tend to vroom when it comes to interests, and it can be very consuming, and it's wonderful. But it's just interesting how many different people are neurodiverse.
And is the interest in Norse paganism, do you feel, I know it's difficult to generalize, do you feel it's more an entry route into it is the stories and the myths and the legends, or is it more the sagas, the family sagas, the history, the sense of connection to the real past, if I may say so? It's all real in different ways, but
Yeah,
to
mythological.
the tangible world, or is that difficult to differentiate?
I feel like there's a mixture. Some people are very into the historical side, whereas some
Yeah,
people are more into the mythological side.
yeah,
Um, something I was going to say and I can't remember what it was. Brain's gone bye bye.
that's all right. About the interest that inspired people.
Yeah, I find, in, not to kind of make assumptions about people, but it's interesting seeing us all come together, and a lot of us are a bit outcasty. I don't know if that makes
Yeah.
any sense to you. And in the stories, and I think for a lot of people in the myths, the gods all seem to have some kind of wound or flaw, in a way that they see themselves in there, in a way that say the Christian God is seen as perfect and can't do anything wrong, which is great. But when there's so much going on in this world and people are questioning it and getting angry, having gods that are a bit imperfect and do, have conflict and have things with themselves and,
Hmm.
flaws and all sorts of things going on, it can kind of it helps for some people shape their minds
Then
around it.
the gods aren't models of behaviour anyone should be aspiring to, but they are. But they have lessons for us all. Is that fair
Yeah,
to say?
absolutely. So lots of people, some people see the Havamal as a Bible. I don't particularly see it as a Bible, but it's attribute, as you know, to the words of Odin. But like the way I see it, it's like a guy. So Odin is a god, but in the same time, he's a guy that said, "I've lived, I've done good stuff, I've done bad stuff. This is what I've learned from it. I'm sharing it with you. Take it if you will, or whatever." Really.
And so people have different emphases of history, archaeology versus mythology, legend, and spirituality can be found in that mix, right? But I mean, how does it work for you without, I mean, I don't respect that you may not want to go into all the things that you, but
Yeah.
you know, is it about community, connecting to people who you'd otherwise find it difficult to connect to, or is it more a personal journey, or is that again another dichotomy that's unfair?
Oh no, not at all. For me, it's a mixture of different things. Um, I feel like there is a very big importance in community, in the sense, I think particularly the way this world is going, we've kind of gone. My politics is going to get involved now.
No, politics gets involved in everything, so that's fine.
We've gone into some kind of hyper individualistic capitalist state, whereas a more of a animist community centered focus is more about us looking after each other, and maybe offering wisdom or music or healing in different ways that like aren't necessarily tied to money in that sense. So there's that, but on the other side there is a deep personal journey. There's a lot of self-reflection and introspection, and my experience seems to be very much about getting to know yourself in the bits you like about yourself, the bits you don't like so much about yourself, the bits that you can change, the bits you can't change, and how can you live in yourself,
Yeah.
with yourself, because you can't live with anyone else. You're stuck
No.
with yourself whether you like it or not.
Oh, don't remind me. I've got to have to. I think about, oh God, why am I thinking? Yeah, I always say that to people. I said, look, just consider yourself lucky you just have to suffer me being in the room rather than being inside my head, because it's not, it's not nice, You don't know what it's like, Don't complain about me. I'll complain about me, Oh yeah, Oh yeah, I know it's terrible, isn't it? But imagine how bad it is if you're in here,
Oh
No,
gosh,
no, but
absolutely.
seriously, it's that's really interesting because I mean, I think what I find very very interesting is the sense of it's a way of connecting to something that we're losing, something that we've or lost, something that is human and is spiritual at the same time, but it's something that connects us to a more traditional world, maybe.
Kind of. I do. There's something about which something you probably know a lot already about how back in the day, spirituality wasn't separate from daily life. It
Yeah.
was interwoven in that sense. When you eat, we had connection to the foods that we had, and you know the weather. It's
Mm.
when it's stormy, it's Thor. You can see it, you can experience it. The people you talk to, your words have power, they have meaning, and I don't want to get too involved with like talks of Orlog and weird and everything, but our actions do have consequences, and it kind of ties us into our fate and our relationships with people. Being an oath breaker is seen as the worst possible thing you can do, but in a way that makes so much sense, because
Yeah.
if a community that depends on each other for survival puts their trust in one person,
Yeah.
and he breaks that trust, that could hurt a lot of people. So there is that sense of spirituality just being woven into all parts of life, and how important that is. Science and magic are separate. connected and important. Sorry, I'm rabbiting.
But it's obvious it's obviously an important part of who you are and your friends and connections. I'm interested as an archaeologist then, and obviously all my career I've met pagans and heathens of different permutations and personalities, and in different parts of the world too. And I mean, and it's not simply about the archaeological interpretations and the archaeological finds that inspire costume and ritual, but there's also the actual places. And so I wanted to ask you, I mean, and there's no right answer because not everyone lives right next to, I don't know, a Gamla Uppsala, and the Great Mounds or wherever it may be, but how much does that connection to old things, stuff, sites, monuments, landscape matter, and how do you feel connected to them? And if not, why not? And if so, why so?
I do feel connected to them. I feel like objects in themselves tell a story, places tell a story.
Yeah.
There was an interesting video that I watched about medicine and how we haven't discovered medicine recently. We've inherited it from people who have tried and failed and tried and failed. And as you know, you're a specialist in death and memory. Memory is so important, and objects carry memory.
Yeah.
You can, when you find some of the grave finds, how a drop spindle could mean so much to one person, how that ties into scythe and magic, and how a weapon could have killed somebody before they died. And how I like to, when I see an object from the past, I like to relate it to myself and how what I leave behind, what someone might think of me. They might see my glasses and think, this person's got really bad eyesight. Or they might see my phone and they might accidentally scroll all my messages and think, who is this freak? Or my lyre that I got for my birthday recently, and how lyres have been around yonkies, and how I could attempt to create a song from a long time ago, and whether it sounds good or not is up to my skills, but the fact that that is possible is really cool.
So reproduction items are important for you, but so are museum collections, heritage sites.
When we went to the auction museum and seeing all the combs and how people combing their hair was so important. There was that stone that we found with the story of Sigurd on there.
Yeah.
People wanted to create and decorate, and
yeah.
I think what really brings it all together is how human people are, and how we can often say, oh, these people, they were very sensible, they thought like X, Y, Z and that, but they were like us. They might have written Dave was here in runes somewhere, or they might have I kissed this person, ha ha, or even the fantastic, beautiful Viking poo.
Ah, the Lloyd's Bank Opera Light. Yes, no, we must all worship the great poo god.
Yeah, but it's such a reminder that they pooed.
Yeah.
Like we do.
And that sounds silly, but it's not, because literally every TV show or documentary, the last thing they'll mention is people having to use laboratories, and it's that human humbling connection, and we make a joke out of it, but it is a genuine, that particular poo means nothing, but it's the story that it tells us about people's lives and experiences and their discomfort as well as their joys. It's all part of the mix.
Exactly. There was an interesting conversation that we had about, because there were debates about grave finds and the beads.
Yeah.
How they were saying that reconstructed costumes have too many beads, but then we were talking about how that might be a story in itself.
Yeah.
Like grave, they might have given their beads to somebody.
Yeah, I think so. I think people would accumulate a lot of beads, so I don't think they're right. I think that's so we're having that chat, weren't we? Yeah. But it's the humble objects, and I think that's what Norse paganism reminds us it's not specifically or exclusively a link to the Viking Age or the late Iron Age more broadly. It's more a link to daily lives of people who had to look after sheep and goats and pigs and cows and geese and ducks, and they had to look after the oats and the rye and the barley and the flax, and all these the complexities of hunting and fishing and whaling and trading and fighting, but it was a real world of different times and places that in our isolated existence, this is what a lot of archaeology is trying to appeal to. So it'd be a bit ridiculous if we denied or denounced people simply for doing that in a slightly different way with with stories that merge together history and fantasy, or should we say, and I think that's really important that we archaeologists don't forget that, because we certainly, every time we go to see a group of school kids, well, regardless of their faith or ethnicity, you can get people interested in old times. People don't need to have it as an ancestor. They can just be interested in what it would have been like to live in a society where you had to do this. How would you how do you keep warm at winter? How do you cool off in summer when it's baking hot? So everything, and that daily quotidian is the word. The
That word.
yeah, it's the type of thing you find in academic books. They say words like that. Quotidian, Quotidian. Yeah. I don't know if that's
Isn't there a restaurant called the Pain Quotidien?
Let's just say yes. I knew that.
I think they sell croissants and bread and stuff.
Norse croissants, no doubt. I'm just being silly. But you never know. That's another thing. If you've got Viking poo, perhaps we could make up some fictional finds to confuse people online. The Viking croissant, because the Normans made I could do I could do silly posts, but people would actually believe me, and I'd get into trouble.
It's the truth. It's the truth.
Because I heard it said by a man online.
It tastes the Somme.
Yeah, exactly. It's all to do with the Somme. So that's a really good introduction, or gives us a good sense of who you are and what Norse paganism means to you. If we're going to build on that and then think about ancient things and stuff, reproduction, real, Norse pagans obviously don't have many archaeological sites as such, but then many Christian sites were probably pagan, many different time periods may have had later reuses, so you have to adapt, don't you? I mean, how do you deal with it?
You do have to adapt. A big example of this is ancestral veneration. It's very important as part of, from a faith perspective. So a lot of recent ancestors are Christian, so instead of visiting your ancestors in a grave mound, you might go to a cemetery and leave offerings there. There are some fascinating, beautiful sites across the country, maybe not necessarily Norse pagan or Viking Age more recently, but possibly potentially where. I went to that church, the All Hallows Church in Goodman, the day before I met you in your
Yes, that's right. Yeah, which is associated with the story of Coifi, the last pagan priest of the Northumbrians, and whether it's actually just a story Bede made up because Bede was a git, or it actually happened. There's a whole debate about whether it's a metaphorical articulation of Christ's crucifixion, and there's all sorts of different readings of that story, but it is in a place that we can link, and it is archaeologists and historians like John Blair and Sarah Semple have talked about Goodmanham as a place that could be a pre-Christian cult site, and I've never been there, but I've managed to avoid it, even though I've been all over the East Yorkshire Wolds. I've never been to that, so I was like going, oh, you went there? That's one of the my gaps, but it is a fascinating place, I think, to connect.
It's Goodmanham, sorry.
Yeah. No, I knew what you meant.
What am I talking about? Yes, it was closed when I went there, sadly. But I believe in the stained glass windows they have like the story of the Christians taking over and all sorts. But it was lovely going there because it was silent, and there's a mound that you have to walk up to get to the church. So the idea that it was potentially a site, it's
Yeah.
believable, even if we don't know, obviously. And there were yew trees everywhere, which the yew is significant in the Norse faith, but also in the Celtic pagan path as well. The yew tree symbolizes a lot of things. It's interesting how that carries on into churches, and how lots of churchyards have yew trees when Christianity doesn't necessarily have that animism in that same way. But it's a bit like Christianity adapting to the people there, which was, obviously, I'm not, saying that Christians were so accommodating in every aspect, in every way, but it's interesting, that kind of connection there. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's increasingly, as we adopt post-colonial approaches to our own islands, we're increasingly at least attentive to the fact that what we're talking about is Christianization following a conversion period can be critiqued in two ways. The idea of a conversion period that has a discrete end, and a Christianization process that overwrites or represses. Well, there would have been things that there would have been antagonism, there would have been violence, there would have been imposition. Frankly, I would suspect let's make up this is like a broadcast. 97.5% of pagan practices probably continued, says me with evidence that I just made up. AI, Google, tell me a statistic that isn't made up.
You sound like an orange president. I'm impressed.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the kind of I wasn't trying to do that, but it always ends up that way. We're looking into it, but paganism, nasty people, nasty. Sorry, I digress somehow. So we have most of these sites and practices would have continued. People would have still been tending their sheep in exactly the same way. People would have been, all of the things we just said about that animistic connection to the landscape, the way they're working with the landscape. Early Christians and most Christians, probably until most of the changes in Christianity are probably post-medieval in terms of imposing orthodoxy, on societies that did continue for many centuries at least, in most aspects, honoring the dead in a comparable way. Subtle variations to but it's not a fixed, a moment in time. And so when we talk about Norse paganism, we're not just simply talking about pre-Christian, because actually we're talking about not just survival, but an indigenization of Christianity and a localization of Christianity into existing structures.
Well, you can see that with folk magic, for example. Even little, obviously, I'm not saying the Christmas tree was stolen from pagan, because that's been debunked. But little aspects of, even in the Tudor period, they brought greenery in at Christmas. That's a very animisty pagan thing to do, even if it's not strictly this is what they did. Even you find in Norway and Denmark, they put porridge in the attic for the elves at Christmas Eve. Iceland, they have like the Galdrabok with the occultist, slight, occult magic. When you see the images, then they're obviously not runes, but you can see how they could have been inspired
by.
And instead they call upon the Virgin Mary and God the Father and Jesus, but they still have that magical aspect to it. And they still, the Huldra folk is still talked about, even in post-conversion in Iceland. They still talk to, they still don't build things in certain places because they don't want to annoy them. It's like Ireland is a very Catholic country, but there are places that they do not build things because they do not want to disturb the good neighbours. That's important. So it's just interesting how little things just carry on, because we need land connection. Personally, I feel like that's really important. And stories have always been part of our culture. You see it in fairy tales. We take those for granted, but you know, they are part of, especially, you know, you've got the European folk tales, European fairy tales all over the world in different ways, and how, you know, that they're even adapted to movies that we go and watch and we take them for
Yeah.
granted, but some of them date older stories. It's just fascinating. Sorry, I'll stop
That's
going
really
on.
interesting. No, no, please don't apologise. And so I'd like to ask. I mean, I meant to ask this earlier. You call yourself a heathen to
Mm.
refer to Germanic heathenry. Do you prefer that to Norse pagan? What is your because people seem to have different views, but what's your take on the terminology?
Overall, I don't really mind. I'm quite
Okay,
happy to call myself whatever. Um,
that
I
sounds
belong.
dangerously relaxed. If we can't create 20-minute long videos about how people have slighted you by using the wrong term, then what's the point in the internet? Okay,
I know some people get really annoyed by the word heathen as well.
do they? Yeah.
Yeah, there's been, my friend commented on someone's TikTok saying, you know, calling themselves heathen, and someone had a full on like, it's a derogatory term, which I guess in some ways it is. But then there's an act of reclaiming it as well. I belong to a group called Asatru UK, and a lot of them call themselves heathens.
Right.
And I guess there is a post Catholic in me is like, oh, I'm a heathen. Ha ha ha. There's a bit of a thrill in that in a way, but then also, you know, calling myself Norse pagan, like, that's true. I follow the Norse gods and the Norse stories, and I'm also pagan. I could call myself a Nordic animist as well, because you know, I follow animism, and I could call myself a pagan, or I could call myself a spiritual person. Um, yeah, there's so many things that we can call ourselves or label ourselves with. Honestly, I don't mind what I'm called, or as long as, you know, it describes what I do, I suppose, and describes my path at least to an extent. Um, I'm not offended mostly.
So, I mean, Norse paganism is simultaneously a very old, or Norse heathenry, a very old but also a very new religion. And
Mm.
I wondered what you thought were the main challenges with individuals and groups being Norse pagan, Norse heathen in today's world, Nordic animist in the world.
Well, there's a few challenges.
So-
There's a there's quite a few. I'll list I'll say the elephant in the room to last. I think the first challenge would be that kind of community centered, you know, a lot of us just like to sing by the fire and like to be ourselves in this world where, you know, profiting off things is the priority. So it's community focused, you know, connection versus individualistic capitalism. That's one big challenge.
yeah.
Another challenge is, of course, the hyper masculine Viking stereotype.
You mean like me?
Yeah, of course, because you're an alpha male, right?
Valhalla!
See?
Sorry, it just happens every couple of minutes. I try to keep
Right.
it in.
It's hard to control, I understand. But there is that.
Oh, sorry, no.
My mother told me.
She did.
Did. But yeah, there is this hyper, you know, masculine, Hollywoodized idea of what a Viking is. But then tied to that, there also is this idea that we're all centered around the Viking Age, which isn't necessarily
No,
true.
no.
Because, yeah, sure, what we have could possibly date to around the Viking Age,
Yeah.
but that's not the focus. It's, you know, there's so much more in terms of like the animistic connection, the ancestral connection, the land connection. The stories are probably older in some way than the Viking Age, even if going, you know, far back they had different names or different motifs. There's everything starts somewhere and then grows from that. So there's that. There's that challenging the hyper masculine ideal. You know, you get some men going around going, "You're my Valkyrie," and I'm like, "No, I'm not. Do you know much about the Valkyries? I wouldn't want to piss off a Valkyrie."
Well, if it's an invitation for them to be taken off and to be brutally unalived in some horrible way, you know, but I don't think they mean it that way.
Yeah, exactly. There's also, there's this idea that somehow we worship the devil, even though the devil's not really in
No,
heathenry or
no.
pagan. But you do get, you get some evangelical Christians who think, that we're worshipping idols and doing that. So that's definitely a challenge. The elephant in the room, of course, is we have a Nazi problem, and that is a massive, massive challenge.
So it's that sort of pagan extremist, sort of Odinist,
Yeah,
the Volk, the sort of, we are blood and soil, we are the real owners of Europe and the land and
might need
white.
their
Yeah,
username, and
yeah. And they creep in so many ways, don't they?
they tie into the hyper-masculine idea as well, and yeah, they do creep in. And you might meet someone you think, oh, they seem nice, they seem good, and then they'll say one thing, and then you think, okay, hold on, and then they'll say
Yeah.
another thing, and you're like, okay, hold on, and then and then you realize, and then it's quite sad when you find out that actually they might have not been as inclusive as you thought they were, because at the end of the day, we're in open practice. We are. Whether people think that we should be closed is their opinion. I don't agree with that opinion, but we are, like, it is an open practice. There are other cultures that have a closed practice, and there are reasons for it because of the history of colonization. We talk about, you see lots of people posting with chin lines, and how that is appropriating the Kalaalleq Inuit
Yes.
culture, which has a beautiful story behind it, and people just do it without kind of taking that into consideration. There's reason things are closed,
Yes.
but we're not closed.
No.
Like, we aren't, and people like to tell other people that we are, and it's not true.
So it's about people who want it to be exclusive, wanted it to be exclusive to whites, to people of European heritage, including, ironically, people in say Australia or Canada or the USA,
Yeah.
who most people would not see as connected, as well as people in Scandinavia who
Mm.
really buy into this white replacement paranoia and all that kind of anti-immigration and re-migrationist ideas, don't they? And
Mm.
there's pretty scary radicalized people. May not all have jack boots and little mustaches, but they
Yeah,
they take many different aesthetics and ideas, but they are promoting the same hate, aren't they? you
they
know
do, and it's undercover as well. It's kind of, you get someone that might, they it ties into the hyper masculine ideal of how, like, women should be soft, and then you've got that kind of sad wifey homesteady stuff.
yeah, yeah,
And
protect the women, the
oh,
precious white women, from the evil men who are
mm,
Jews, or maybe in league with Antifa, or whatever they think is um, the latest demon to imagined goblin or ghoul that they feel is stalking the wastelands outside their Herod, type, you know, they're
it's like there's a big, in that white supremacist thing, there is a very, like, anti-LGBT stance
yeah,
as well, which doesn't make sense because you got a load of very anti-Loki people, which, when you dig a bit, not everyone that's like that, but you do dig a little bit deeper, and you find a few of them are a bit anti-LGBTQ. But
yeah,
then when you read the stories and you listen to the myths, the Vikings travelled. If you
yeah,
look at the mythology, they mated with giantesses. They explored. The Havamal says, not saying it as a Bible, but it does
yeah,
inspire you to listen and get wisdom from everyone, no matter what background. Everyone's human, and you can learn something from them. And Odin was known to be a bit queer and shapeshift and practice women's magic, and Loki shapeshifted into a horse and got pregnant, which is wild. But a lot of the kind of white supremacist ideas, for me, it contradicts the the animist connection and the myths, and because a lot of that animism is deconstructing colonial ideas and white supremacy. it's
yeah.
it's about the humanness of you, and kind of reclaiming old stories, but then also recognizing and honoring other cultures and stories, hospitality in that as well, connection. Like it baffles me why that's. And I think what upsets me the most is that a lot of them cling to Odin as the kind of white supremacist one, when he's the opposite. He's
totally queer.
he's queer, and he wanders the 9 realms, and he speaks to different people, and he learns from everyone.
There's lots. This is the thing that I think is true of any religious people. It's not exclusive to Norse pagan heathens. It's there's so many ways to creatively be spiritual and connect to archaeological places, themes, monuments without being a jerk. I think that's and yet the louder they are in any spiritual community, the more prone to being a jerk they seem to be, and so you end up in the quieter, more insightful and wise people in any community are the ones that are not making the viral videos or with the massive online shops full of cheap tat or whatever it may be. They're just plugging along, doing their shit, being members of communities and being respectful of the past. Because I think one of the things that I find perverse is that I would always look to most religious people as potential allies in the conservation, management, interpretation of archaeological sites, monuments, landscapes, and material culture. It doesn't always work that way. But when you come across groups within the Norse pagan community who are proud to have acquired objects that are most likely taken from the grave of a person who shared some form of belief that they purport to are fine with, it'd be the equivalent. It'd be like saying, "Oh yeah, I found it on eBay. It was a cross. It was a true relic of the Holy Cross. Or it was part of the toenail of Saint Sebastoplop or whatever. And before and you think, hang on. I thought you're supposed to be venerating this stuff, but you've just got it on your mantelpiece where no one else. It's almost like there's this huge. It's more like it's nothing to do with their spirituality. It's to do with they're centering their own ego and their own acquisitionary, whatever the term is. They want to, whether it's symbols or cultures, they just want a bit of everybody else's shit. And I think that's part of it. It's a very selfish way of looking at everything. As long as they can have their pie and eat it, then that's fine.
Interesting movie, which is quite a low budget movie, and the title's a bit naff. It's called Viking Sorceress Ruin of the Dead, which sounds really like a naff title. But there's some interesting stuff, because there's a bit where she does the Merseburg charm, which is interesting, and there's a bit of a moral about stealing from the dead and how that's not a good thing to do. And the Draugr come after them, and it's good. Bad.
Well, that's good. I haven't heard of this. That's fun.
It's on Prime. It's worth watching. It's not like a high budget movie or anything.
No.
But it, as a story, it's quite good, because it does address the whole idea of stealing from the dead and how that can have negative effects on you, which is a bit of part of the Norse pagan tradition. Stealing something from a grave. There are stories of people breaking in and taking things, heroic journeys as well, but then there is also a danger.
There is.
Angry spirits can come for you.
The danger can come from the dead, or from the curses or the weird attached to objects, the sort of fate that is inbound onto those things. So that's where there's a lot of ways in which we can work in dialogue with spiritual communities to combat hate, but also to combat illicit trade in antiquities, to challenge people's stereotypes, and because none of the spiritualities you're discussing rely on a Hollywood Vikings or a particularly repugnant, racialized, everyone was white as snow with blonde hair, and it's not online, it's not Photoshop, or it's not honestly, it's not Instagram aesthetic. We are all this pure and this healthy looking, and I think that's really healthy, I think, for archaeologists to challenge that and find connection with Norse pagans in doing so, because most of them don't buy this nonsense, and most of them are really care about just not being a jerk.
There's a couple of archaeologists in Archaeology Johan McCarthy is one. I don't know if he said he's heard of you.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
knows you, always met you. I can't remember if he met you or because
No,
I
I can't.
mentioned your name and he was like, oh, I know of him. So
I hope not too bad.
it's really nice because I don't want to rabbit on about Assetry UK, but because it's a great organisation if you're heathen and you want to join an inclusive community.
They're the first stop shop for you. You would recommend,
Yeah,
right? So we'll put a link in the bio. Yeah, definitely. Go on. Yeah.
because there's lots of variety of people and they offer resources as well, and a few of them are authors, but it's very anti-white supremacist, anti masculine hyper Viking stereotype. But we went on a trip at the Winter Nights gathering. We went to Wales, funnily enough, and
Yes.
we found, is it Castle Barla?
Oh,
There's a lake and
there's a Barla, but I didn't know there's a castle.
there's a ruin. There's a big ruin on the mountain, and he was talking through it, and because he's Welsh as well, and it was just, I think it might be Castle Barla or Castle.
A Tomlin Barla. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a mott at Barla. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And he was just so passionate, and you could tell he was an archaeologist because his work is spiritual, but then he also interacts with the past in an archaeologist kind of way. So it's nice seeing that, and how archaeology and paganism, they don't have to be these.
No.
They can be interwoven as long as each respects the other side. And I think pagans can embrace archaeology.
I think so. Absolutely.
There was, when we went to that talk in York, Ruben from Highland was talking about museums and how, from a spiritual perspective, how we can, what from a spiritual perspective, what a museum can do to kind of honor the spirits, but then also what can pagans do to honor the past.
Yes, I think that's true. And firstly, museums are a kind of quasi-sacred space, but also they could do a lot more to facilitate pagan and other faith actions and interactions with their collections. I think there's a lot more they could do there. Yes.
And I think there is ancestral veneration and honouring story and ancestors, while also having a modern practice that grows, and they can be. There is a way to connect them in a respectful way, rather than just being, I'm gonna steal this sword because I want it and I'm gonna sell it and make loads of money. And
yeah. Have you any final thoughts before we wrap up, Meggie? Anything you wanted to add that you think we haven't yet?
No, actually, I think I've rabbited on about.
No, you haven't. That's fine.
I think there is a beauty about the past, and how the past is part of a chain. It's stereotyping as like but we are part of a chain. We are this part of a chain that's led up to us, and that will continue on this chain, and that what we do now will create the future generations. But then we've received what they have given us, and it's what we do with it now. I think that matters. It's most cliche possible saying that I can give.
Sometimes the cliches need to be said, because they may be familiar to you. You may think they're cliches, but other people don't hear them, or they don't hear them from the right people, and they hear them from people trying to stoke hatred rather than trying to create positive community. Yeah. So it's really important. Thank you, Meggie. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I just want to say that we'll put in the description the link to Asatru UK and to your own social media if you're willing, and any other. And to what?
2 elves and a dwarf.
2 elves and a dwarf, of course. The best elves and best singular dwarf I know. And I tell you, I don't know many because I keep telling them to shove it, sling their rook. So relation to sort of dwarf charms that I've been discussing in a recent TikTok. But yeah, sling your hook, dwarfs. you know. But no, it's a great music, and I want to congratulate you for that, and thank you for all your time and energies in joining me today and sharing your personal but also broader themes with our viewers and listeners. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard, for inviting me and
You're very
tolerating
welcome.
my voice for however long.
Always a pleasure.
Follow Archaeodeath on YouTube, TikTok, WordPress, and a host of other social media.